Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Entrust Group's webinar on precious metals. My name is Paul Ruiz, the Director of Professional Development here at the Entrust Group. We thank you for attending today's seminar. This seminar is purely for educational purposes. This seminar is not to advocate or recommend that you invest in precious metals, but it's purely from an educational perspective to allow for you to broaden your horizons in the types of investments that could be held in retirement plan assets. A little bit about the Entrust Group. The Entrust Group, again, does not provide investment advice nor endorse any products. All information materials are for education purposes only. All parties are always encouraged to consult with their attorneys, tax consultants, financial advisors, before entering into any type of investment. Again, this is purely just to broaden the horizon of the investor on what's available to be held under your IRA or employer-sponsored plan. The agenda for today's seminar is to talk a little bit about the Entrust Group and who we are when it comes to offering these particular educational products, but the focus of the seminar is on precious metals. What types of precious metals are allowed in IRAs? As well as share with you some of the information that was shared to us by some of the investors on the benefits of investing in precious metals. Then at least you're aware of what precious metals can do in your investment portfolio. And last but not least, how to invest in precious metals with an IRA. We can show you how you can do that with the Entrust Group, but pretty much the same steps or methods are also, can be used to accomplish setting up an IRA that invests in precious metals with other organizations. But at least you'll be able to see the steps that we take at the Entrust Group. Last but not least, we're going to take a look at some frequently asked questions about precious metals, and then we're going to open up the phones for any questions you may have in regards to the materials presented. Now, this presentation is probably going to last around 25 to 30 minutes long, and then after that, we're going to open up the phone lines for any questions you may have, and depending upon time, we will try to answer as many questions that are posted on the screen for us to answer. Now, keep in mind, every attendee of this particular seminar will receive a recording of the presentation today. So for those of you who are interested in viewing this particular presentation, again, this seminar is being recorded, and you will get a copy of the recording of this particular webinar. All right, let's begin. The Entrust Group has been around for over 35 years, focusing its goals into opening up the world of self-direction to investors. What does self-direction mean? When I get asked, what is the difference between a self-directed IRA and a regular IRA? And the answer is there's really no difference between one organization offering an IRA over another. So in other words, if you go to Schwab or TD Ameritrade, set up an IRA follows the same rules based on the Internal Revenue Code. It just so happens that those other financial institutions have an investment to offer you. The Entrust Group does not offer any investments at all, because in our world it's an open architecture model, which we basically have a platform that allows for you to set up an IRA, fund an IRA, and then you, the investor, gets to choose the investment that you choose to invest your assets in a retirement plan. So in other words, you can invest in real estate, you can invest in notes, you can invest in precious metals, which is the focus of this particular course. The due diligence on a particular product has to come from you, the IRA holder. But it's our job as a record keeper just to offer some education, a little bit high-level education on the different types of investments that are available under an IRA. There are only typically 3 different investments that you cannot hold under an IRA, and those are your collectibles, life insurance contracts, as well as what we call S-corps. Since IRAs are trusts, trusts cannot be a shareholder of an S-corp. But there's a broad array of different types of investments out there that can be held under your retirement plan, of course, as long as it doesn't violate any sort of Internal Revenue Code or Treasury regulations. The Entrust Group has focused its efforts in offering an infrastructure that allows for investors like you to avail of a broader array of investments. Again, we've been around for 35 years. We process around 12,000 to 16,000 transactions on a yearly basis, and we hold over $2.7 billion of investors' assets, focusing mainly on the alternative investment world. Our staff is very knowledgeable. A lot of our staff holds what we call a Certified IRA Service Professional designation, which, by the way, the Entrust Group owns a school called the IRA Academy, which has been approved by the American Banking Association's Institute of Certified Bankers as a preparatory course for individuals who would wish to take what we call the Certified IRA Services Professional designation issued by the Institute of Certified Bankers through the American Banking Association. We actually also, some of our associates provide training for other organizations as a CE program for continuing education for real estate investors and other types of institutions such as certified financial planners. Our courses can be used as continuing education credits for those particular types of designations. We are also an approved provider for the Internal Revenue Service for anybody who holds any designation that, of course, is approved by the Internal Revenue Service called an enrolled actuary. So again, our courses are approved for that particular designation as well. All right, let's dive into the material. What are precious metals? Well, precious metals are referred to the classification of metals that are considered rare and or have a high economic value. And what does that mean? It means certain gold, silver, or palladium, silver, or other types of precious metals that can be, held under a particular a retirement plan must fall within this particular category called precious metals in order for it to be held under their IRA. The IRS allows for purchasing precious metals with IRAs with certain exceptions. In other words, there are certain rules that govern holding precious metals under a retirement account. The Small Business Job Protection Act of 1996 is the tax law that basically changed the rules in regards to precious metals. Typically, when we have collectibles, precious metals fall under that category. It just so happens that in 1996, the government decided to allow for precious metals to be held under a retirement plan, given the fact that they wanted to raise funds, allowing what we call American Eagle coins as the main reason why they allow for precious metals. American Eagle coins are issued by the U.S. Mint and is a revenue generating product that is issued by the U.S. Mint for the government. Fortunately enough, they also allow for other types of precious metals to be held under a retirement plan, and that's the focus of today's course. If for those of you who would want to do some more research in regards to precious metals, you can Google Internal Revenue Code 408M. 408M was the tax code that was added that allows for precious metals to be held under a retirement plan. It also outlines where they get the classification or the criteria to determine whether or not a particular piece of metal can actually be held under an IRA. Again, mentioned earlier, there are rules governing the types of precious metals that can be held under an IRA. Again, as mentioned earlier, American Eagles issued by the U.S. Mint. As a matter of fact, for those of you who would like to do, again, some research, you can access www.usmint.gov, and in their brochure, it says in there that these particular coins issued by the U.S. Mint, whether it be gold, silver, palladium, or platinum coins, are allowed to be held under an IRA. Well, what about other coins or other types of precious metals? Other coins or other precious metals, if it's not an American Eagle, fall under the Bullion category. The Bullion category means that there are certain levels of fineness that these precious metals must be held up to a particular standard in order for them to be held under an IRA again. In other words, if you're going to be dealing with a dealer that deals with precious metals, they must be knowledgeable about these particular rules in the types of precious metals that can be held under an IRA in order for your IRA investment to be compliant with the Internal Revenue Code. The Internal Revenue Code, again, is Internal Revenue Code 408M. When it comes to the bullion category, there is one specific criteria that is important. And what that criteria is that if it's a bullion, it must be held under the possession of the trustee, and in some cases, the institution that you're dealing with is also considered a custodian. Now, keep in mind, in individual retirement arrangements, or IRAs, are what we call tax-deferred accounts. In other words, the earnings or the growth of an investment does not get taxed until you distribute it. So therefore, it always has to be in the possession or in custody or in trust of a particular entity. Some of the entities call themselves a trustee. Some of the entities call themselves a custodian. But keep in mind, some custodians do not have the means of holding the actual precious metal itself. Therefore, common sense will tell us that there must be some sort of holding facility that holds the actual precious metal in order for arrangement with such custodian, trustee, and such holding mechanism to hold the actual precious metal, not only to hold it, but also to be able, in some cases, to be able to transact the actual precious metal. In other words, you need to be able to buy and sell that particular precious metal in order for, number one, to purchase it, or if you want to create liquidity, sell the actual precious metal. Coins and bullions. Again, as mentioned earlier, gold, silver, palladium, or platinum metals must meet certain fineness requirements. Here are some of the examples of certain coins that are currently held under a precious metals depository held under an IRA. Of course, we mentioned already the American Eagle coins, American Buffalo coins, Australian Kangaroo Nugget coins, Austrian Philharmonic coins, Canadian Maple Leaf coins. Again, some of the coins that we're talking about here may still fall under the bullion category since they're not American Eagle coins. Nonetheless, they may be coins held under an IRA. The bars and rounds produced by a refiner or manufacturer must be accredited by some of the trading platforms such as COMEX, LIFI, or LBMA, or the actual government mint of the particular country in which the coin has been manufactured, which should provide disclosure on the fineness of the particular coin that's being held under an IRA, for you, the IRA holder, to be able to look at it to determine whether or not it can be held under your IRA, as an example, at the Entrust Group. Now, here are some reasons why some people invest in precious metals. Now, keep in mind, this is not an all-inclusive list, but it's enough to be able to give you a little bit of an overview on why some people use precious metals to diversify their portfolio. In other words, in most cases, a lot of people, a lot of investment advisors say to investors, don't put your eggs in one basket. Now, keep in mind, some financial investors typically advise from a standpoint of the investment that they sell. What this particular seminar should tell you is that you are not limited to those particular types of investments. There are other investments that other financial institutions cannot hold that are able to be held under a retirement plan, such as real estate, such as notes, such as investing in a privately held company if that's the risk tolerance of your liking. Along those lines, precious metals are also one of those types of investments available to be held under a retirement plan, in this case, your IRA. It's a tangible piece of property that is held that has an actual tangible value. In other words, you can actually get a value for this particular investment. Therefore, even though the investment may depreciate in value or reduce in value, it's still there. It's not like other investments where if a company goes belly up, then guess what? Your investment is gone. Precious metals are, again, a tangible type of wealth accumulation because the actual piece of property that you're investing in will always be there. It is relatively stable, which is what some dealers have told us, as well as investors, that can be securely stored in an IRA-approved depository. So in other words, it's always good to hold a certain percentage of your portfolio in something that's stable as well as also tangible. In other words, it's not going to go away. Precious metals have retained intrinsic value regardless of economic conditions. It's not swayed back and forth by any sort of economic issues may be going on in the location that you're in, such as real estate. In other words, real estate sometimes might be very good in some parts of the country, but also be a drastic reduction in an individual's portfolio because of the down crash or a market crash in a particular area. Last but not least, I mentioned already, it's a way to spread portfolio risk when inflation threatens currency values. It's nice to have something that a value might go up or sustain itself when other parts of your portfolio might be inflating or artificially deflating because of economic situations, may it be economic instability in a particular section of a country that you're invested in, so on and so forth. Again, we're not investment advisors, but we're just offering you the pieces of information that we acquired throughout the process of holding these types of investments under an IRA. It is always good to check with your tax or legal advisor before proceeding with any sort of investment. What must you know before you invest in a particular investment? Well, we always say conduct your own due diligence. In other words, research as much as you can. Find out as much as you can from, in this case, any sort of dealer dealing with, what are the historical information that you can find out from, let's say, the historical background on the increases in value in gold or silver before you go into it. Don't fall victim to fraudulent or untrustworthy dealers. In other words, do your own due diligence by interviewing not just one, but multiple dealers maybe, and then compare your notes so that you can go into the particular situation informed. Your IRA provider, like the Entrust Group, will not recommend investments. So if you are looking to us to ask for questions in regards to what should I invest in, we're not in a position to do that. And that's why we always advocate to consult with a tax or legal advisor. Ask for questions with the dealer. Do they offer gold coins or bars? What about silver, platinum, or palladium? They may have a limited assortment of types of precious metals, as well as ask for the necessary questions such as the things that I mentioned already. Are you familiar with the types of precious metals that can be held under an IRA? Because keep in mind, only certain coins of a specific quality or fineness are allowable to purchase using a self-directed IRA. Now, if they're not familiar with that, I would highly recommend to look for another dealer. Another thing is that regardless of whether or not you use the Entrust Group, not all retirement account administrators are the same. Do they have some connectivity with some dealers already? Or are you, the IRA holder, left with looking for that dealer? And if so, how is that facilitation of information going back and forth from the dealer and the IRA custodian going to be accomplished? You, the IRA holder, to your best interest, should look for a custodian that has some sort of connection with that dealer, but also offers flexibility to choose the dealer as well as the storage facility that you're going to be dealing with. In other words, options are always good, because as you vet out these particular vendors that are able to hold these particular types of investments, ask them what are your costs and how does that information flow back and forth. Because in a self-directed retirement arrangement, Entrust, as an example, as a custodian, we do not offer the investments. We will require that fair market values or values of these accounts must be provided, because we have our obligation to report certain fair market values to the IRA, to the IRS at the end of the year, as well as we also are responsible to report to the IRS the fair market values of the assets upon distribution of these particular investments from your IRA. Now, what are the holding options? What does that mean? When it comes to working with a custodian, who can hold the particular investment? In other words, what entities are holding the investment? It could be a conventional domestic option. In other words, a physical bar through a dealer of your choice stored in a depository institution within the United States. Let me give you some example. Brinks would be one. Delaware charter would be one that actually holds these particular precious metals. Those are just some of the domestic options. There are also online trading portals that allow for you to invest in precious metals that are allowed under an IRA. And the Entrust Group is the first and only retirement plan administrator that offers a fully automated precious metals trading account where investors are able to instantly purchase and sell physical coins or bullions within their IRAs. In other words, we've spent the money to invest in an infrastructure that deals with these trading platforms, or in other words, dealers that offer precious metals that are allowable under IRAs. Now, keep in mind, you still would have a choice in regards to which dealer you want to go with, as well as the depository institution that you choose to hold the investments that are held under your IRA. Because keep in mind, you can't hold it yourself. Somebody has to hold those in custody on your behalf. There are also international options. In other words, you can purchase a precious metal through a recognized international dealer, and the investment will be held at an international location. Of course, there are, again, requirements of getting a fair market value of those particular investments, and as well as the investments must be within the criteria that would allow for those particular precious metals to be held under the IRA of your choosing. In other words, the custodian that you're working with will be able to interact with that particular international depository institution. Now, here are some frequently asked questions in regards to holding precious metals in your IRA. What are the different forms in which precious metals can be held in an IRA? Well, here are some of the things that we mentioned already. You can either actually hold in your IRA physical gold, silver bullion, platinum, palladium. You can also hold certificates of ownership in regards to these particular precious metals. And in some cases, it may be in the securities world called an exchange-traded funds dealing specifically with precious metals. So in other words, you don't necessarily have to invest in the precious metals directly. You can actually go through a broker-dealer of some one way or another that actually deals with what we call an exchange-traded funds. Exchange-traded funds are a little bit different than mutual funds because it acts almost like an entity that, as if you're investing in a stock directly, but it just so happens that that particular entity, in this case, invests in precious metals. Here's another question that a lot of people ask about precious metals. Can I use funds from my existing IRA or previous employer plan to invest in precious metals? And the answer is yes. For the most part, a lot of people have accumulated their wealth in contributing to IRAs at other financial institutions that hold other types of investments, or in most cases, a lot of people have accumulated wealth through payroll deduction through an employer-sponsored plan, such as a 401k plan. Now, let's first take a look at an employer-sponsored plan like a 401k plan. In a 401k plan, you have to have met what we call a triggering event or a distributable event in order for you to take money out of that employer. In other words, you must have separated from service, the plan terminates, or you've reached normal retirement age. In other words, a life event that allows for you to take money out. In most cases, if you're still working, unless, of course, the plan has what we call an in-service provision, you do not have access to your employer-sponsored plan document until you hit such trigger. What's the message here? Talk to your plan administrator or your ex-plan administrator if you'd like to be able to use your former employer's 401k plan, 403b plan, or governmental 457b plan before to ask them if you could move those assets into an IRA, as an example, at the Entrust Group or another custodian for the matter. If that movement is what we call a direct rollover. Although it's moving directly, it has a different term to it because it is reportable to the IRS. The IRS will want to know if you're going from a 401k plan, 403b, or governmental 457b to an IRA. Therefore, it's reportable. That's one way to fund your IRA at the Entrust Group and then invest in precious metals. Another way to fund your IRA at the Entrust Group to invest in precious metals, and I'm just using the Entrust Group as an example, is via what we call a transfer. A transfer has to happen between like plans. In other words, if you have a traditional IRA at another institution and you want to move into a traditional IRA at the Entrust Group, you can do that via what we call a transfer. Unlike a direct rollover, a transfer is non-reportable. The IRS is saying if you're just going to move from one traditional IRA from another institution to another and I can't tax anybody, save the paperwork. In other words, it's a non-reportable event. So for those of you asking, where do I get the money to be able to invest in these particular types of accounts if I wanted to use the Entrust Group, is you can do a direct rollover from a 401k plan, assuming, of course, you can take the money out, or do it via a transfer from another IRA to another financial institution to your IRA of choice or custodian that can actually accommodate having precious metals under their IRA. Here are some other questions. Are IRA account holders able to store precious metals at home? The answer is no. Keep in mind, again, the concept of retirement plans is that the assets must be in custody of an entity that is separate from you in order for you, the IRA holder, to receive tax deferment of your assets. In other words, similar to you investing in TD Ameritrade as an example, and you wanted to put some money in there, you want to invest in securities. Well, you can't have that security held under your name. In other words, it cannot be under your possession as well, because the moment you take possession of that, that is what we consider as a distribution and reportable to the IRS, which leads us to the next question. Are IRA account holders able to take delivery of the precious metal? In other words, can an IRA holder take a distribution of the precious metal in kind? Of course, depending upon how the precious metal is held at the depository. In other words, do you actually own the precious metal itself with a serial number, et cetera, at the depository institution, or is it a pooled account that basically just gives you entitlement or ownership to a particular piece of precious metal, but later on can be sold to another party by just re-registering that particular precious metal? If you actually own a piece of precious metal and it can be distributed from that depository, you can request what we call an in-kind distribution from your depository, which, of course, if it's a distribution, depending upon the type of IRA that you have, could be what we call a taxable event. Because the moment it leaves the umbrella of the IRA and you take possession of it, whether it be in cash or in kind, now that distribution becomes a taxable event to you, the IRA holder. So what's the message of the story? If you want to keep it tax deferred, keep it under the umbrella of your IRA. Now, keep in mind, of course, depending upon the IRA that you choose, if you are 70 and a half, traditional IRAs are subject to what we call required minimum distributions. Therefore, a minimum amount or a small amount is going to be required once you reach a magical age of 70 and a half. Whereas in a Roth IRA, as an example, there are no required minimum distributions while the account holder is alive. But again, to go back to the question, can an IRA holder take delivery of the precious metal? Yes, but it's going to be considered what we call a distribution. Right? Here are some other questions that I'm not going to answer specifically, because if you are going to want to engage the Entrust Group to establish a precious metal account, I'm going to give you this number right now. So if you have a pen and paper handy, this is the time to write down this number. If you want to get a hold of our precious metals division, the number is 877-545-0544. Again, it's 877-545-0544. And ask for extension 308. Then they can talk specifically in regards to fees and all the other intricacies that you might be asking or needing to ask in regards to holding a precious metals account at the Entrust Group. But generally, here are some of the questions that individuals have in regards to having a precious metals account. What are the fees involved in holding precious metals in an IRA? Number one, there's going to be an administration fee. Why is that? Because the record keeper or administrator of your IRA is going to charge a fee, because they don't do this for free. They charge a small fee. Ask what those administration fees are. You will also have an annual depository storage fee because, again, the code, the Internal Revenue Code, requires that the custodian has that particular precious metals in their possession. And most of the time, custodians would deal with a depository institution, approved, of course, whether it be domestic or international. And there are storage fees that are involved in regards to holding a piece of precious metal under your IRA. Now, here's another question specifically with Entrust, but it could go towards any other custodian. Does Entrust store my metals or select the depository institution? The answer is no. Since it's a self-directed IRA, you, the IRA holder, has that choice. Again, the IRA account holder chooses their own depository. But, of course, in our portal, which we have, streamlined the process somewhat, we will have some choices for you to choose from if you choose the Entrust Group. I think it's probably going to be one of the last questions. Does Entrust choose the precious metals dealer? And the answer, again, is no. But in our portal, we have created some connectivity with some dealers that you might want to, do your due diligence on and scope out and see if that's something that you would like to do. But no, the account holder chooses the dealer and the type of product they would like to invest in when investing in precious metals. What is the difference between an allocated and segregated storage? As mentioned earlier, segregated storage ensures that your precious metals are kept separate from other metals in the depository vaults. In other words, specifically, your precious metal is assigned only to you. Whereas an allocated storage, metals are commingled in a depository metal account. And it's easier for them to facilitate the movement or ownership of the particular piece of precious metals because they're held in one pooled account. And then the sale and purchase of that can just be handled electronically. But in essence, your account still holds a piece of precious metal. Who chooses the depository? Again, this is kind of a piggyback to the question asked initially. It depends upon the IRA administrator and the IRA holder. The IRA holder can choose their own depository institution. The IRA administrator may also have a say in that because there has to be some sort of communication between the IRA administrator and the depository institution to make sure that we receive the right information to report to the IRS. But with Entrust, the choice is up to you. You can either choose some of the connectivity we already have in place, or you can actually choose your own. Now, let's talk a little bit about Entrust. This is where since we're offering the educational piece, why choose Entrust? I'm just going to read it off the screen because this is what you're looking at already anyway. Entrust offers a low, all-inclusive annual administration fee, no setup or transaction fees either. Again, if you're interested in setting up a precious metals account for your IRA under the Entrust Group, you can contact us at 1-877-545-0544, extension 308. Again, it's 877-545-0544, extension 308. We will provide the record keeping for your investment. What does that mean? All the annual reporting that's required for the IRS. In other words, your IRS Form 5498, the fair market value statement, those are all the things that we provide, as well as a 1099-R if you choose to decide to take a distribution. And these amounts in your particular IRA account will also be reflected in the Entrust Group portal to show you that, this is the value of your IRA at the Entrust Group. There's also zero hassle. In other words, we're easy to do business with. We have a dedicated team that actually handles our precious metals accounts at the Entrust Group. In other words, Entrust handles all the paperwork to and from the dealer, making the transaction process clear and compliant. So in other words, if there are questions about choosing a particular depository institution, those questions will be answered by going through the Entrust Group because we've already created the connectivity with the dealer as well as the depository institution. You will also receive regular account updates and can always access your account via our online portal. So in other words, you'll know the balance in your account through our online portal. Now, how do you invest in precious metals with IRAs? It's a 3-step process, all right? But there are additional steps, of course, since this is a precious metal involving a deal. But typically, it's 3 steps. The first step is establish an account at the Entrust Group, and that requires completing an application form, our general fee disclosure, and then, of course, we will need a valid copy of your driver's license or passport. That process typically takes about 24 to 48 hours to establish an account. Once you have your account, you will receive an email from the Entrust Group. Welcome to the Entrust Group, and this is the way to access your account number. That account number is very important. Why is that? Because that account number identifies your account at the Entrust Group, which needs to be communicated to your prior custodian or previous employer in funding your account. What does that mean? If we are going to transfer from another IRA at another institution, the naming convention of the check or wire must be under the name of your IRA, not you, because if it's you, then it's what we call a distribution. So it has to be delivered to your IRA. Here's an example. The Entrust Group for the benefit of John Doe, traditional IRA, and then the account number. That information is essential so that the dollars that are being sent from your prior custodian doesn't get lost. Because keep in mind, we process multiple transactions on a daily basis. Having the right tag or name on monies that are coming in to the Entrust Group is essential so that those dollars can be posted to your account without any glitches. All right? If it's a direct rollover, it works the same way. The employer must be notified that the check or direct rollover or wire must be made payable to the Entrust Group for the benefit of your name and your IRA. Step 3, 4, and 5 is dealing with your purchasing a precious metal under your IRA. You have to choose your dealer and depository. You place your order through your chosen dealer. You submit what we call a bi-direction letter. The bi-direction letter is our own internal form in which is used for you, the IRA holder, to authorize us to use the assets in your IRA to purchase that particular piece of precious metal. The invoice and depository election form to the Entrust Group must also be provided to ensure that we, without these forms completed properly, then, the invoice is necessary so we know how much to pay, as an example, the dealer. So the bi-direction letter, the invoice of how much it's going to cost, as well as the depository election form for Entrust to be able to fund that purchase of that precious metal that you're choosing to hold under your retirement plan.